about so that we can try to think as thoroughly as possible through this process. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And if you're on your phone, that makes like viewing everything really difficult. But I want to be able to present our information in an orderly way. We love being able to see your faces. I'm so glad to see you all. And you have found yourselves at a well-scheduled question and answer. And we had one earlier this week, and so while we're not going to tell all the questions, just to give you guys a chance to think of your own questions, we have already written some answers to some of the questions that came this last week. So I'm excited about that. It's on our website, and I hope that we get a lot more really good questions from you today. Before we begin, I'll do proper introductions. My name's Jackie Bryant, and I'm the principal at IVA. And this is our 8th year as a school, so I feel like we're 8-year-olds in a lot of ways. And then we'll go down the line. Go ahead, Amos.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amos Mikaela, and I'm the counselor here at IVA.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jordan Altmeyer, and I am the office supervisor at IVA.
Hi, everyone. I'm Julia Chibun, and I am the admin assistant at IVA.
And I'm really glad to have this team here today for you, because when there are some basic questions, the very first line of response is going to come from Jordan or Julia. So I hope that you've already been able to call and ask questions. If you email info@IVA Long Beach, it goes to a group of people, but they are our sort of first responders. And then our counselor and I are the ones that do other work as well. I don't know what I was going to say there, but you should probably interact with all of us across the year. So I'm glad to see you in this fashion. I think that you're generally on mute. I actually didn't check the settings, and we are going to have you use the chat if you can. But we're also going to see if during the chat, if you can just you can also just speak out. There will be specific times where I'll say, just share your thoughts here, ask your questions. Also, you guys are okay, but I want you to know that when school starts, we are going to be explaining the expectation that we will always have our cameras on. And so, but you guys, you're adults, and you're allowed to have your cameras off, and make sure that you're on mute if you go to the restroom. Okay, interactive chat. Let's get this started. Before we just sort of talk business, I'd love to know how you're thinking and feeling. So if you can, in the chat, share one thought or feeling that you have or that your child has about returning to school. And then after we give a couple minutes for that, or a minute for that at least, we'll have Amos and then Jordan and then Julia read out your responses. So type into the chat if you can. And thank you for those responses that are coming in. We do know that one of the good instructional practices that teachers have is that they have like wait time. They just like pause and see if there's any responses. And we actually realized some instructional practices make sense online also. And so this is one of those that's continuing online. One thought or feeling, Amos, and then Jordan, and then Julia, will you read out some responses and keep typing them into the chat as we go?
So, the first 2 entries I see is anxious.
Yes, after anxious, I see overwhelmed, and the start time is so early.
I see from Nikaya, she is wondering if middle school is hard. She's an incoming 6th grader. And from Stall, I see confident because my son is at IVA.
Hmm. I see excited, and then Natalie writes, Cody says simply good, and then David writes again, concerned about screen time and length of classes online.
I see another overwhelmed. Edgar says nightmare. Yvette says trying not to think about it.
Mm.
Excited, Santino can't wait. From John Denton, I see Harrison really misses school. And from Rachel, tired of the uncertainty.
Concerned about online learning. AJ writes, I would like my child to have an in-person meet and greet with her teacher before actually using digital schooling. And then Keith writes, trying to be hopeful, but really anxious, uncertain.
I see another anxious, and then SB says, hello, my son Donovan feels good about distance learning because he knows we have compromised family here.
From Karen, I'm feeling trepidatious, such a mix of feelings, excited for Mackenzie to be back with people and uncomfortable with all the unknowns.
Mm-hmm.
Then I see thoughtful, excited, but misses his teachers and friends. Isabella is sad she won't be in school. And then Madeline writes, what first comes to mind is the camera on requirement, which is against lots of expert recommendations in terms of equity and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
SB says, oh, it moved. Sorry, guys. Give me a second to find it again. I feel nervous, but I am confident. David says, concerned about screen time and length of classes online. And Karen says, parents can't monitor.
Mm-hmm.
From CB, they wrote need for social interaction. Karen, need physical education. And SB, I would like to figure out how the 7th and 8th grade students can welcome the incoming 6th graders virtually.
And then Nicole writes, bummed, can't see friends. How are you handling RSP? Can't wait to be on site. And then Natalie writes, relieved that Cody is at IVA. Other schools in LBUSD seem to be a mess, but you guys have it down. And I love the communication. Thank you. And then Bill writes, how can we facilitate more direct connections between families and parents?
Well, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment and then share again because there's some tech things I don't know how to do, like take off comments or move my chat. The teachers are way more skilled than I am at this stuff, but I want to say, not to cut off your thoughts, but please continue to talk to each other on the chat. That's open for you guys privately or together. But I want to say that you've got a lot of thoughts and feelings, and these are all very real and a lot of them very hard. And while we hope to provide some answers, many of your concerns might be some that we just take away with us. And I'm really, really glad to do this with weeks before school starts so that we can be very, very thoughtful in our approaches. So thank you for sharing those with us. If we didn't actually know how you were feeling, we wouldn't know how to respond. So same with your students. The bell schedule is in the newsletter. And before we start talking about what your questions are about the bell schedule, actually this might lead into your questions. I'd like us to just sort of, for each other, if you haven't had time to study it, can you type into the chat things that you notice about the schedule or that you have noticed as you've been looking at it, things that you think about the schedule, so just your comments on it, and then things that you wonder. And I know that some people may have already put some of that with their previous chat, but go ahead and add to that chat. We're just going to give a moment to stare at this schedule and get people's observations. And then if we can, Amos and Jordan and Julia, would you start reading anything that is just what people notice, so we can start in that order? And after we've gotten a couple of those, we'll move to any comments and then any questions. And then we'll be like full-fledged into our questions.
Oh, I can start. First one I see here is there's no room for RSP. Office hours seems too short. And then a question from Karen is what subjects will discussed on blocks? Do we get block schedules before classes start?
I see one comment says, perhaps selfishly, I wish the independent learning was on Friday, but I'm sure IVA has good reason that it is on Monday. SB says, wonder about lunchtime logistics, enough time to pick up and eat for all 3 kids at home.
From Kimberly, she asks, would independent learning be for completing assignments or for pursuing personal interests? And from Angela, I appreciate that the teachers are given planning time.
I see Isabella writes no minimum day or questions. Nicole writes RSP question marks. Harley also notices office hours seems really short. And then David writes concerned that Nathan will be able to sustain focus via remote learning the entire day.
Madeline writes, I noticed Monday is basically open, which I like. Glad there are breaks. Block scheduling, I'm curious about how teachers are thinking to optimize 80 minutes. Seems exhausting for the students and teachers. And then I see Natalie writes, what happens if your child can't log in at an exact time when class starts? We are working parents and need to be in the car occasionally, question mark. Do we work it out with teachers individually?
From Rachel, wonder how much support my child may need during the Monday independent learning time block. And from David, why are the classes so long? Why are they not shorter and more frequent? Balancing synchronous and asynchronous learning. Why is Monday predominantly independent?
Good. And okay, so I'm going to depend on Amos and Jordan and Julia to help make sure that we're not missing any questions at all. And we're going to try to, so this is the interesting part. When we get like so many questions, I want to be able to address your questions, but I want to try to do it in kind of like a logically organized way. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. I'm going to share it again because, let's see. I realized that yesterday it was really, or the other day, it was really helpful to share my screen and be able to view it as we had Jordan and Julia and Amos type the questions into the slideshow so that we're just like double checking as we go that all the questions are visible. So let me fix this again, share it again. And then we are gonna get started on this. Okay, so you guys have some really, really good questions. There were some questions in general about how we built the schedule or why some of the classes are the size that they are. I think I will try to have us address sort of the like function of the schedule itself first, and then the problem solving, the student support questions after that. And Jordan, Julia, I think if you can copy one of these Q&A slides, if you're not already doing that, and then add more questions if there are ones that we haven't answered before. But, okay, based on some of the questions that I heard, and then remind me which other questions are in this general category. There were some questions about like, why this start time? Why this length of time? Why our office hours built into the way it is? I also heard there like, when is the RSP support? Things like that. So I'm gonna try to address that chunk and then tell me if there's other questions in that realm as well. And like, you guys, I love to talk. I also love to hear myself talk. It's probably why I'm like really into being a principal. So please interrupt me, my staff, at any time if it's just like, you're going too far. This is unnecessary. We talked a lot about the online schedule this year. this summer, I guess. And in last spring, when we were all sort of putting this together, what was it? Triage. When we were doing like school as triage, we created a 45-minute schedule. And one thing that we realized is that the length of time that we had with students, with that 45-minute length of time, that it did not allow for a depth of understanding content. What it did allow for is it allowed for teachers to just give a whole bunch of content to students. But because there were 45 minutes, there wasn't really even time for kids to ask questions, maybe a few questions. But one of the core of our program is that we want students to think really well with the content that we have. So if we're the only ones that have the time for thinking and we don't afford that space for student questions or the space for them to sort of discuss with each other, then we're doing good schooling for us, but not as much for our students. And so we tried to ask, how can we extend the amount of time that we're with students? So when we're in person with students, we have almost 2 hour long classes. I think it's like 7 minutes short of 2 hours, which it seems extreme for schools. Some schools do this, college level does it more maybe, but in our 2 hour class, what we really appreciated from it is that we could approach the same content, but from multiple angles. So if we wanted to read a short story and then have time to discuss it, and then write something about it, and then share what we wrote, and then get feedback for it, and then rewrite it, we could do it all within that block of time. So it allowed for a real depth of thinking. And when we were in our 45-minute classes, which we thought, like, this is all we can handle on Zoom. We do not want kids strapped to the screen. We just don't want that for any of our lives. So we really limited it. But at the end, we took a survey from our parents and students and teachers. And one of the main things that most people said is, we need more time. This is not enough time. And so we extended our block time so that we could have time to be in person to the extent that's allowable by law, which is going to be online right now, as much as we could. Normally, our office hours is 20 minutes, 4 days a week, and students have to choose between which classes they go to office hours. I don't know if you all know about like middle school and high school, but math can be one of the hardest classes for students. It's a totally different kind of content learning. And our students had, like, they really struggled with, like, I have to go to math, but I have to go to this one too. But it was always like, I have to go to math and something else. And students would just have to make a decision about which office hours they went to. Something we're excited about at the office hours schedule that we have. We know it's only 10 minutes long, so it's not 20 minutes, but that office hours is intended for that class. So students will be in class together, and then class is dismissed, but students can stick on Zoom, or teachers can say, Jordan or Julia, I want you to stay for office hours. Or parents can say, can you please ask my kid to stay for office hours? Because even if you're asking them to ask questions in class, I see that they're not, or they tell me that they're scared to. So we place that office hours after every class. Let's see. And then we know that there will be assignments that students have that they have to work on independently. And so we have like an expectation that students should expect there's about an hour a day of independent learning that they'll need to do. This is homework, but this is extension of assignments independently. On Mondays, there's a larger block of time, and this is going to be really different for every student. For some students, they're going to need a lot of that time on Monday just to finish their assignments. We expect, and now, like, this is expecting to the best of our ability, we expect that there will be about 6 hours outside of class time that students will be independently learning, finishing assignments, doing homework, watching a video before class, those sorts of things. So we have some of that after school, Tuesday through Friday, and then we have some of that on Monday. The other thing that Monday allows for is it allows for additional support for students. So if we can't fit it into the weekly schedule, if there's any sort of speech and language or other RSP or IEP supports that students have, they will be able to get some of that on their Mondays. That independent learning time, we're working out exactly what that would be for, actually teachers are still on summer vacation, so I'm just working with people who want to chat with me during the summer. So as we're coming back together next week for professional development, but the way that I'm beginning to envision without all of the teacher input yet is that learning time is when teachers are grading, doing feedback, their lesson planning. Our goal is to, on Monday, by the end of the day, give all of our families, we're going to do our newsletters, we're thinking at the end of the day, Monday, give all of our families the week at a glance. So it has all the assignments for the week, any videos attached to it, any messages from teachers, instead of being in like a variety of different places and you have to check Google Classroom everywhere. We want teachers to have the time on Monday to be able to send that out for the week in advance. And then the other thing, I think that's it. Jordan, Julie, oh, one last thing, and then my staff, can you tell me if there's other related sort of questions I can try to answer here? But the RSP at IVA is a push-in only model. We realized that the best learning that students have is in class, in discussion. And so we're doing a lot of training and we're doing a lot of learning at the end of this summer to make sure that we can do discussion and strategies and thinking routines and all the things that we normally do in class in an online setting. What we found is that when students are pulled out of class for whatever reason, they miss the conversation. They miss chunks of understanding. And so we can't just replace that with a worksheet and we have a push-in model. That might look like a student that has an IEP and they get support. The RSP teacher will come into the room and the RSP teacher will be a part of that breakout room that they might do in their Zoom sessions. So let's talk as a class, let's break out into smaller groups. Now we have instructional aides and we have RSPs. We have lots of adults who visit classrooms. Other teachers do. And so it's not going to be too weird for an extra adult to be in the breakout room. And so that's some of the structure there. One last thing I remembered, and then tell me what I missed. But one last thing I remembered is that the start time, I know this is a public forum, and so I should be diplomatic, but oh man, the start time. I mean, it's like back to school for real. I have loved shifting my schedule, coming into work at 10, even if it means I stay till 6 or something. I just loved the morning so much. But when we go to in-person learning, class will have staggered schedules and the first start time is going to be at 8:20 a.m. So we are trying to start the school day and get back into functioning. But tell me, like, add your thoughts to the chat. We will take your thoughts and consider your feedback on all of that as we try to figure it out. So what related questions?
Jackie, I was going to say, so the questions on the slides are being added. So maybe if you want to start going through that as Q&A with the date on there.
Okay. Okay, great, thank you. And then Amos and Jordan and Julia also like interject, like tell other things that I haven't added. What subjects will be discussed on blocks? What subjects will be discussed on blocks? So students are receiving a schedule, not next week, but the week after. We're going to have a materials pickup, and we are trying to plan lots of things for that, where families can come pick up with social distance, masks on, but we're gonna like take pictures of students and hand out all the materials that they need for their novels for Lit Comp or their art classes, and they'll receive their schedule as well. And students receive 6 classes. I think I'm trying to answer this question, but I don't. All of our classes are on block schedule. So math, science, Lit Comp is their English, social science, their exploration course, which we don't call electives because you can't really elect into it. And then physical education. Now, there's going to be adjustments for every class. Physical education, they don't want to stay on a screen for their class block time. They want to say like, hey, everybody, let's check in. And then we're going to do this, we're going to assign this to you. It has this support video. I'm just making this up as I go. No, this is what I've learned from them. And then you're going to go do it and then come back to class at this time so we can check in. There's going to be a lot of flexibility, especially for physical education. Does that answer that question? Or Jordan, Juliet, Amos, do you think there's something else that might be asked here?
In reference to scheduling or the student schedules, correct?
That
Okay.
first bullet point.
I think that was good.
Okay. Lunchtime logistics, really good point. The pickup for lunches, especially with 3 kids at home. It is my understanding, and this might not be correct, and so as more information is put out by the schools, we might have to adjust it. But it's my understanding that you can pick up food at one location for all of your students. If this is not correct, or if you actually need more time than 40 minutes, then please put those comments in the chat. And if we need that for our families, it would push the school day longer, but that's okay because like you can't think if you're not eating. But I really appreciate that question because I didn't think about how long it might take to go and come back and then eat. And that's a priority. Would independent learning be for completing assignments or pursuing personal interest? Yeah. So one year we took a survey of our students and we asked them, how long do you do doing home thinking or assignments outside of class a week? And the responses came between 0 hours and 40 hours. Although teachers were thinking they were assigning about 90 minutes a night, 5 days a week. So my response to independent learning is that everything is going to be different for your child. I think I could give like a general, there's going to be 6 hours of assignments outside of class during the week that they might not spend 6 hours doing, but they might spend more than that. We're especially because we can't be in person, going to be doing a lot of feedback with our students. How is it going? Is this too much? How long is it taking you? If your child just sort of like gets things quickly, I don't know, maybe that could be a day where they walk outside or something. But if your child struggles in school and they need more support, that could be a day where they're meeting with a small group of students and one sort of like advisor or advocate for them and making sure that they're organized and that they have the supports they need. We know that students being online was a real challenge for motivation. It was a challenge for feeling connected and for feeling like they belonged. And so we're trying to adjust and provide those supports around that. Amos, anything to add there?
No, I was wondering if you could touch base about advisory. I think there's a parent who asked about what is advisory in the morning, and given that it's on Monday also.
Yeah, so this was also a good question from the other day. So I'll put this slide up. So our advisory program is, I think it's a little distinct from other schools. It is this protected time where students have a small group of students and one advisor that's assigned to them, and they sort of like check in for the week. They also talk about intellectual virtues, what they are. Like there's a week where they just talk about like what is curiosity, and then a month or so into the year, the advisor starts asking students to figure out what they're curious about so they can lead an advisory session. So this advisory, we're really looking at it this year as that social emotional support, that mental wellness check-in, and then also just this like encouragement to be curious. Because even if you have these classes and teachers really want you to ask questions, I don't know why this is my go default explanation or sample. I had an advisory group one year that wanted to talk about conspiracy theories. And in some classes, those will be addressed to a certain extent. But if they really want to go in deep about conspiracy theories, advisory is their time to do that. Not that I'm encouraging like the whole school to go after that. That was one of my most frustrating years as an advisor because it just kept coming. Amos, anything to add to that?
Well, I think we should, there's a parent who's asking if we get into advisory groups right away. And we are going to start whole school advisories, right, for a few weeks. And then we tend to group the students, I think around October, November-ish is when we actually get into their small groups. And in person, our groups were like 8 to 10 students, but it's going to expand from 10 to 15 students, I believe, once we get into our smaller groups. So.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm really excited in this next week of our professional development with teachers to think, what is the adjusted whole group advisory topics? These are like our culture building opportunities. What are the adjusted topics because we're in this online situation? Because normally we do exciting things like what kind of a listener are you? But that it's just going to be so different for online. So advisory is that culture building sort of like culture orientation. That's a weekly ongoing thing. I'm going to go back to this slide. No minimum day, you ask? Well, we do have minimum days, but there's only so few of them because our minimum days are, they help protect the teacher time together in professional development. And the way that we set up the schedule, we don't need to change anything or protect it. So that your Monday is your minimum day, and it's quite a minimum day. We start advisory in the morning at 8:20. It's kind of like, is everybody awake? But then the day is structured for students. We will still have minimum day schedules that I'm so glad you asked the question because we haven't even thought to build what that schedule is yet, but we will have that schedule for parent conferences, for back to school, for open house. And we also are trying to figure out how to make things like back to school very exciting when we're not going to be in person. But we will have minimum days, just they're very rare. Oh, and how teachers thinking to optimize. I think I might have addressed that. Our students last year during the quarantine time, they were like, this 45 minutes is just, teachers also, this is just not enough time. We as a school are sort of trained to be together for long amounts of time. Although our teachers are really good at doing brain breaks, and I think that will continue even though it's 80 minutes instead of almost 2 hours. RSP, what happens if your child can't log in the exact time it starts? Yeah, if there's a situation like that and you know that that will kind of be a common thing, you're welcome to email the teacher. We actually ask in middle school, this is kind of like we ask in middle school that you help your child to write an email to the teacher. That the communication tries to come first between the student and the teacher. And then, whenever it's not working or if it feels more sensitive to you, then please feel free to email the teacher. But we're very aware that there are adjustments and needs. We're also trying to have one ongoing Zoom link for a class that we get out to before school starts. So there's not that like last minute, where is the link? We can't find it. So what a waste of everyone's time last year. Okay. Wonder how much support my child may need during the Monday independent learning time block. I made a comment earlier this week, and I want to sort of like be really careful about how I say this. One thing that some families are considering is having pods. I just don't think that a pod is something that we as a school can recommend because it sort of goes against the social distancing. But you and your families, you need to do what you need to do for your families. So I know that in my own family, we have another family that it's my sister's family. And I know that my husband's in charge of child, sorry, there's like a good word, a good politically correct word. Anyway, he's like the lead parent in our home for school, related to school. And I know he wants to not be the lead parent straight for 5 days in a row. And so he's talking with, he's talking to see if he can take some, they can take some. But I say that also saying that like the school's not going to be able to support people potting up, because it's just not something that as a public institution we can recommend. So I think that's a big deal, like how you're going to monitor or watch your kids. I think it's a really big one that maybe we can create a forum for parents to just talk to each other about how they're doing it, to get ideas from each other. Jordan or Julia, Amos, anything to add to that? Or next question for me?
I think there were a couple questions on the chat about social engagement and social interaction amongst students. So I think that feels along the same lines as a pod. And I think the questions I'm reading are about how that's going to be incorporated in the schedule, perhaps.
Yeah.
And then there was also a question about material pickup. So I don't know if you want me to address that now or a little later.
How about you address it after I try to address the social interaction? So as a school, we're totally online. We thought of this like brilliant idea to have a parent mingle meeting where we were in person but distanced and everyone's responsible and we like got to see each other. Did you know that it's $1,000 citation if a large group is meeting in public? I thought I was just like going to sneak it and make it happen. And I'm coming to terms with the fact that I can't, as a school, as a public school, we just can't. We can't do it. So I am assured though that our classes are social interaction. There's discussion, there's engagement. A lot of what our teachers want to figure out is when we break into these small groups, how do we have students actually continue to talk to each other instead of just doing it when the teacher checks in to that group. But there is a lot of social interaction. Advisory also provides a much more less structured social interaction, hopefully where they're laughing, but it's on the screen. And so that I know that your kids are in adolescence, and I would say like, I hope you guys are all best friends and you can find ways to play together because they're your people. But it's a really hard time for adolescent kids as well. Can any other staff members sort of respond to the social interaction? Or is there anything that I didn't say or?
I'm thinking in terms of like liability also, if doing something outside of or in person, that's the first thing that comes to mind. So as a school, we have to do what's best for our school community in regards to their health and safety. But I think for student engagement, someone else mentioned that last week. Will there be clubs, right? How can students get together and with the same interests like they did in person, create clubs? And that's something we're still trying to process, having the space for the students to do that, and then also potentially having like an IVA, an adult there to supervise, and so that parents can have some ease of mind knowing that they're not in their own groups with kids at their own age and there's no adult supervising it. So I think should we get more clarity on that, we will for sure make an announcement and let the school know how that looks like. So
yeah, there's some things I'm totally confident about and some things I'm like, I don't know, we're going to figure this out. One is that, yeah, students can do clubs. Although last year of like maybe 24 clubs that students had, their student run clubs, there was one that lasted, and they like went the whole time. But others, I don't know what it is. They're on Zoom a lot. It fizzled out. So yes, we'll absolutely tell kids they can form clubs. We're going to take a lot of student feedback about what makes it good. This also makes me think about, normally we have student leaders that are trained to bring kids into orientation. In such a new setting, I feel I hesitate to bring in student leaders when we don't know what we're doing at all. I'm trying to have our teachers be that orientation. But I also know that our 8th graders, they want to be in leadership positions. And so where we can find and where it can make sense to us, we're going to put them in that to onboard. I also imagine that if at some point we do, when we come back in person, we're going to do the things that we always do when we come back in person. We're going to do the orientation, we're going to do student leaders, the things that we know how to do in person. The schedule and material pickup, Jordan?
Yes, I can share about that. And then I also see a couple statements about the cameras being on.
Good. Yeah, we will look into that. We'll talk to our insurance company. Thank you. We'll check that out and be very clear and follow the law. We follow the law here.
And then for material pickup, we do have scheduled, we'll be sending out a newsletter tomorrow with this information, but Monday the 24th, Tuesday the 25th, and Wednesday the 26th of August, we'll do a grade level each day of the week. And then from 10 a.m. to 3:30, it's just open pickup time. So you and your student, or just yourself, or if you just want to park and let your student run up, masks on for everybody and socially distanced, but we will have Chromebooks for families who fill out the form requesting one. We will have novels, and then we will have printed schedules for each student.
We also are going to take pictures of the 6th graders, and I'm going to be there, and I want to meet them. So I want your human bodies there. I want those kids there if you can, of course. So there's a question, will the teachers be live with students or pushing out pre-recorded? I think that it's almost all live. I think there will be pre-recorded videos for some of the independent learning. So you know the term asynchronous, where students are learning on their own? That just feels like such an off-putting term that I'm just calling it independent learning, but that's what's meant by asynchronous. Synchronous is when they're together, and in their bell schedule, the teachers will be with the students. I think maybe the only exception to this is if a teacher gets COVID and I have to have a substitute, then we might make some adjustments there. Let's see. Will the same 13 students be in every block? So when we come back in person, we can have 13 students in a classroom and maintain 6 feet of social distancing. When we are online, which looks like it's going to be longer than we imagine based on recent requirements from the governor, that we're looking at the county and how many COVID cases there are. It doesn't look like we're going to go back into person very quickly. So we tried to create an online schedule that was the best we can imagine. When we go back into person, it's going to be a great shift. There might even be student schedule changes. Online, our class sizes are what they're supposed to be. They're 26 kids in a class. So there'll be 26 students with every teacher in each of their block classes. When we go in person, then we'll be reducing it down to 13. And we're not just going to go in person as quickly as it's available. We're going to watch and see, because we know that there's going to be a big disruption in schedules for families and in even their class schedules. The platform that IVA uses is Google Classroom. We aren't using Canvas, and we use Zoom. School Loop is a student information system, and the one that IVA has access to as a really small school and organization is called Illuminate, and that's where you can see students' grades and attendance. Let's see. Can parents join in the advisory session? No. Parents, you're always welcome to creep in the back of the room. You know, you could set up a camera in your child's room so you can see what's happening. It's actually been really, really nice for parents to be in class, or for me even to see what my child is doing in class. It's been amazing. So I imagine if you set up their spot at such a good spot where you're not on the camera, but you can hear and you're welcome to see that. But that is supposed to be a supported time for students to have close relationships with people who are not in their family, with other adults besides their parents, which is one of the things that we know is what helps support students' emotional health, especially as they are becoming adolescents. One of the first sessions we have with our 8th graders is called "What is Adolescence?" And it's not good when parents are there. We're like, it's hard. Your parents are hard, right?
Jackie, the way that you answered that question reminded me of last week or a few days ago when a parent asked about can they request certain schedules or students to be with other students? And our answer to that was, of course, you can request whatever you want. But the way that the schedule works is we want to balance the classes by the student sex, so male to female ratio. We want to have a good balance. And then we also take into consideration sort of the student dynamics, the number of RSP students so that they're equally spread. And then yeah, so those are the priorities when scheduling. And if families or have certain preferences, you can of course submit those. But yeah, that doesn't mean that they will be met.
Yeah, thank you. I see, will students have to, this is like a wonderful technical question. Will students have to submit pictures of assignments written on paper, or will teachers use online programs for online assignments? Students will not have to print things. Most of the things are being submitted like as Google Docs, so teachers can write comments directly on that. There's this new app that our teachers found where teachers can submit a PDF and students can write on it and then submit it through Google. So it's all online. Everything is so very online. State testing, SBAC, we have not heard whether there's going to be any online state testing this year. I know that the English learner test, they're figuring out a way to make it flexible and online, but I haven't heard anything about state testing yet. Before COVID, the school had homework help after school. Will this be possible this year, but virtually? Yes. I just don't know when, and we might need to hire more instructional aides, but yes, we will be offering additional support, especially to students who are academically struggling. What platform? Okay. What is advisory exactly? I think I may have answered that. If there are questions where you need more clarification on something that maybe I've spoken to, please add that to the chat. Will a teacher or admin help organize or provide info for individual class study groups on Mondays? Yes. Our teachers work really well together, identifying students that might have similar issues. And so I can imagine whether it's the teacher by parent request or admin identifying the sort of support groups, but it's going to take us a little bit to get this off the ground. We have to meet our students. We have to know our students before that. So don't expect right away, but yes.
Jackie, can I make a statement?
Yeah.
So I'm going to let you know of a couple new questions in the chat, one that we didn't hear last session or this session. And then can I also let families know that we are collecting all the questions. So if we don't respond to a question that you wrote in the chat during this session, we will respond to it and then post it on our website. So I linked that in the chat for families so that they can see what was asked and responded to last session, and then we'll do that again with these.
Yeah.
But the new questions that came in, which I hadn't heard yet, was about dress code.
Oh my gosh, that's one. Can you say what the question is? But this is one of the funniest, exciting things.
Yes. It says, McKenna wants to know if there's a dress code or if PJs are okay every day.
I was thinking of sending out a message to our students, like first meeting, like orientation, like, hey guys, here's your dress code this year. I want you to have fuzzy socks. I want you to have pajama pants. I don't know. I think in the shower I get excited. I like make speeches. But dress code, even if we come at the point where we come in person, and they have PE. We can't change. They can't be in like a locker room to change together. I think dress code is all on hold right now. So for some of you, that's good news. No dress code that we know of. Although I think that we're still going to be like, you have to wear a shirt with sleeves, please. Like a full shirt. But otherwise, no dress code. Okay. I was really excited about that. I guess like, because I feel like kids are going to be so excited about that. How will the art class work? Well, I haven't talked specifically with Miss Dennis yet, but I know that she is really excited about adjusting her program for online, and that part of the materials that will be in our sixth graders packages is materials for art. So that. Will there be separate Zoom information and Q&A meetings regarding students with educational needs? Absolutely, yeah. Well, absolutely. I'll ask our SP teacher to help schedule one of those. But we're definitely going to be talking with our families. I haven't received information yet from Long Beach Unified about the way that IEPs will be serviced this year. So I'm waiting on that. I think they just began meeting as a team. IVA is an independent charter school. We make all of our own decisions. We do our own hiring. We're like our own district office, with the exception of special education. There's so many laws of our own special education that we pay LBUSD a portion of their overall special education costs, and they provide all special education services to our students. When do you realistically think we'll be back on site? Ha! You want me to predict the future? I don't know. Realistically, when the COVID cases in the county of LA County are reduced, when we're not on a watch list, and the governor put out a watch list that has a map of California, and everyone who's in blue, what a nice color, is on the watch list, which means you cannot open schools. Only when it's released will we be able to go back, and that's when COVID rates have reduced for over 14 days will schools be allowed back in person. So I think families will start to hear when it's like, whoa, we're one day off the watch list. Like I think California will be talking about it, and we'll all kind of know at the same time. I don't know. Anyone else? Can you predict when this is going to happen? Sometimes I'm like, as a principal, I should have all the answers, and sometimes I'm like.
Can I add
Yes.
to that, Jackie? I know that like we've talked about, when we make a transition to hybrid, it's one that we want to be lasting.
Yeah.
When we get there, we don't want to come to a point where if something else happens, we have to go back online. It's like, this is our decision. We are going through with it because it's clear on how we're going to support our students and keep them safe and healthy. So that's one thing I feel like should be reiterated.
Yeah, thank you. We're not going to just jump to it immediately, because if we have a very small number of students or teachers that get COVID, we have to automatically go back. We have to quarantine the whole school. And so it's like, we're going to have to switch schedules again. Okay. Are there any IVA subject online tutorials for newcomers to be familiar with how classes will start online before school starts? Yes, please advise. Okay, we are going to do our orientation. I think that we haven't figured out exactly what the times are yet, but orientation is scheduled for Friday, August 28th. We're going to have a parent orientation and a student orientation. And that will be not only just like troubleshooting, like, can I get onto a class where everyone else is, but it's also going to be our great welcome, our introduction of teachers, and break off into small sessions where students can meet other students that they may or may not have in their classes. But we know there's going to be a lot of orienting that our students are doing in the first couple of weeks of school, and a lot of interaction, getting to know one another. Oh, can you set clear expectations that students don't change their backgrounds? Last year, backgrounds and avatars were very distracting. Agreed. Thank you for saying that. I'm glad we have that note recorded. I mean, although I was very impressed with some of the work that students did on their backgrounds, we can definitely have clear expectations about that. Will students be able to record the lesson and for their records and viewing? That's a really good question. I think, again, the question of requiring students to have cameras on, we'll check with our insurance company before we make a final statement. McKenna, how excited are you that you get to wear PJs? Like, your whole new back to school shopping is so different this year. How do you monitor kids if they browse other sites or play games during class sessions? That's an excellent question. And I think this is one of the reasons why it's good to have an adult in the home. I would wish that we could do school without requiring an adult in the home, because your kids are with adults online. If they have an IVA Chromebook, we have more access to monitoring them. But if they have, or your family has chosen to just use your own device, we do not have any access to that. So if you think this is going to be a problem for your child to like click onto other things, please get an IVA Chromebook. Even if they have a Chromebook at home, check one of ours out, because it is monitored on one program. Also, for families joining us, if you have a Chromebook from LBUSD, they're going to ask you to return that. Our funds and LBUSD funds are totally separate. So return your Chromebook and pick up a fresh IVA Chromebook.
Jackie, we have 2 more minutes left.
No. Okay, we're going to take all these questions. We're going to see, I just talk and talk. We're going to take all the questions and we're going to make sure that we have responses to them on our website and in our newsletter. But can we have just a minute for people to type things into the chat? If there's something that you realized today, or if there's something that you heard and you want to keep thinking about or wonder about, or if there's something that you appreciate, can you all write one final statement, and we'll again have our staff read them out. This does a couple things. It helps clarify in your mind that you got something or you have a clear question, and then it helps the rest of our community know where everyone else is. So we'll wait a moment, and then Amos, whenever you feel like it's time, we'll go Amos, Jordan, Julia. Amos, Jordan, Julia.
I have a parent here that wrote Laura Cerna has a mom of a new family coming into IVA, created a Facebook group called IVA Parents Fall 2020. And they posted the link there. So I think that's for incoming families if they want to connect. Pretty sweet.
That's
and then
awesome. We'll put it in our newsletter. Sorry.
Isabella wrote, thanks for all your planning. Isabella is all about jammies to school. Is PE one of the blocks? And then want to thank the IVA for setting a schedule in place for students to work with.
I appreciate all of the IVA teachers and staff that have given time from their summer to figure this out. John Denton says thank you. Kelly says, I'm impressed by all the staff at IVA. Looking forward to joining all of you.
Unmute says, love the open communication and information. Does put a little of the anxiousness at ease. From, is this Miss Kathy Simpson? I appreciate hearing from families about concerns going into the school year. I can think carefully about these as I adjust and adapt my lessons with flexibility as we learn more each week.
Arvin writes, I appreciate staff being available to answer parents' concerns and questions. Keith writes, I really have appreciated the efforts you have made to thoughtfully transition to online learning. Thank you very much. Jesse writes, I realize what a diverse set of needs IVA students and parents have. And then Karen writes, I love you guys. Please enjoy the remaining summer days with your families. Looking forward to making lemonade with you all this year.
Reina says thank you. CB says thank you for putting this together in such a thoughtful way. We understand that there are still a lot of unknowns, but so glad to be going to IVA during these uncertain times. SB wrote, we truly appreciate IVA being very clear to all of us that you hold the life and health and safety of your students and staff first. Thank you for all the hard work you do.
I see. I'm always wondering about kids for whom internet connections, parent-adult support, and other necessary resources for success in the school just aren't there or are very minimal. From parents of Mia Mesa, are we going to get time and day? I'm not sure what that question is. From Madeline, as for what I appreciate this clear and calm information, things are seeming chaotic in other educational institutions.
And then Julian writes, thank you all, IVA teachers. Santino loves the dress code. Edgar writes, we realize that we live in a different world and we have to adjust according to the new world, which also affects education, learning. Corey writes, thank you, IVA. AJ is excited for the school year. Everyone, please stay safe. Florence, let us know what we can do to help. And then Dana writes, keep making great speeches in the shower. Thank you for the great energy coming from the school.
I'm going to scroll back up. I think there was a couple we missed. RFS said, appreciate this school and its wonderful staff. Juliet says, the weekly newsletter / schedule was very helpful last spring. Very, exclamation. The earlier it is sent out, it is really helpful in planning for the week, but understand you are balancing that with planning.
Any last ones, Julia?
I think there's two more at the bottom.
From Nikaya, I see thank you for this. I just officially disenrolled my daughter from Hughes today. Super glad to have her attend IVA during this time. From SB, will we be hearing from PTA? I want to make sure I sign up. And lastly, from parents of Mia Mesa, I meant when will we get our block schedule?
Oh,
August 24th.
the 24th, 25th, or 26th, when material pickup happens. Students are getting their block schedule. You guys, thank you for joining us. We know you've got lots of things going on in your life. And the reason that we do this is because we love your kids. So we want to be the other adults in your kids' lives. And thank you for being with us. I hope you have a wonderful, like Karen said, wonderful remaining summer. Bye, everybody. Have a great day.
Hi, everyone.
These are some really great questions. I'm so glad to get so many of them. I wonder if this was a better time for families to be able to join later.